G'day everybody, back again working on the Yamaha, on the ag bike. So today we're taking off where we left off last time. I went and found out some information about that clutch. Peter Stevens in Geelong very generously gave me a full workshop manual for the Yamaha AG100, and it also applies to the Yamaha AG175 as well. So it's not a very extensive workshop manual. It's basically how you pull it apart and put it back together. It doesn't really say a whole lot of explanations or anything. But it gave me the tension for that nut for the clutch boss. So we'll be able to do that. I've got those clutch friction discs. They've been soaking in oil for a few hours. I thought I'd better chuck them in oil, let them soak it up, just to stop it from tearing themselves apart. So I'll get the tension wrench set up and we'll tension up that nut to what it's meant to be, and hopefully that'll spin freely. Because as I said, all it says in the book is the tension that the nut should be. It doesn't actually say how free it should spin or anything. So yeah, we'll tension that up and then go from there. We'll assemble those clutch discs back together, put the clutch on, then we'll be able to reassemble that housing. So I'll get it set up and then we'll rip into it. So as I said, there's the clutch discs sitting in oil. Because they're cork, I thought better let them have a good soak up as much oil as possible before I put them together. I'll give them a bit of a douse in oil as well. And yeah, so we'll get set up and we'll hop into it. I just got the tension for this nut, so that's 45 newton meters. So I'll just set me tension wrench to that. Hopefully, don't take much. There's meant to be a special tool you can use to hold the boss in place, but obviously I don't have that. Alright, just tension that nut up to 45 newton meters. It was a bit of a prick to get the missus to help me hold this from spinning because I haven't got the tool to hold it. So it's easy with the second person. Jam a couple of screwdrivers in there, but be super careful you don't bust any of these tangs off. So that's tensioned up now. So what I'll do now is I'll reconstruct my clutch with the new friction plates, and I'll assemble all that back on there. I've also got to put the clutch push rod back in as well, and I'll put a little bit of oil on that as well just to lube it up. And then, yeah, we'll move on from that. So I just put that clutch push rod back in. You need to remember to put that back in before you put your clutch together, or you'll never be able to release the clutch. The only thing I couldn't get replaced for the clutch was the that rubber seal, O-ring seal thing, but the other ones are still alright, so I'll just reuse them. Alright, so once you get that backing plate on, or the actual, I'm not sure exactly what you call it, but that's what crushes everything together. Make sure that's lubed up as well. So you can put all the bolts on for that, and the springs. So I'll just give them a quick clean up. Alright, so with these screws or bolts here that have the spring behind them, the tension for them is 6 Newton meters, but you need to be careful. That's 6 Newton meters with nothing having oil on it, so completely bone dry. So you need to be careful if you do use a tension wrench on them, that if they've got oil you can over tighten them. So you're better off just using a 1/4 inch ratchet and socket and just do them up till they're firm, and you can't really go wrong there. You don't want to over tighten them and snap them or bugger the threads. So just get a 1/4 inch ratchet and just do them up until they're firm, and then you should be right. So I'll get a ratchet now and I'll do all them up. Alright, so we're just going to put this gasket on now and we can seal up the rest of this gearbox and clutch housing. Alrighty, so we got this cover back on over the clutch. It's all tightened up. I did the same thing as I did on when I put the gearbox back together. I went over the screws with the impact driver. So that's all ready to rock and roll. Also chucked a new seal on the Kickstarter there. So now I'm up to mucking around with the cylinder. So just pulled the exhaust gasket out and cleaned all the carbon out of the exhaust port. So what I'll do is I'll pull off the inlet port as well, give all that a clean up, put a new gasket in. And then I've also got a hone. Picked up a hone. I'll redo the inside of the cylinder. It's obviously not going to be perfect, just because there was some deep scoring, but we'll do the best we can with that one. Would have preferred to have got the Donnybrush style hone, but they were a lot more expensive, and these ones are a little bit more handy. They're adjustable, and you're going to place the stones on them, so that'll probably do us for what we're trying to do here. Obviously it's not going to be perfect, but that doesn't really matter. So I'll clean up the cylinder and whatnot, and then we'll redo the scoring in there, and we'll try and clean that up. Alright, so what I've done is I've cleaned up the top where the head will sit on the cylinder there. Cleaned up with just the wire wheel on a drill. Also cleaned up the exhaust port, cleaned all the carbon out of that, and I did the underside of it as well, where the gasket sits onto the top of the engine there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to rig up the hone in the drill, give it a bit of an oil up, and then we'll redo the internals of the cylinder. So I'll set up and then be right back at you. Alright, got the hone set up, put a bit of oil on the stones, so we'll just get it in there and we'll start going. When you're doing this, you want to be just going up and down constantly, relatively quick too, to get the cross hatching nice and diagonal on each other. I'll have a quick look. seems to be coming up pretty good there. We'll put a little bit more oil on the stones. Alright, we'll have another look at that. Yeah, it's taken away some of those rough edges. We won't get it perfect because it's so old and some of those gouges are quite deep, and obviously we don't want to take too much material off, but if we can get it nice and relatively smooth and get a bit of cross hatching back into it so some of that oil will sit there, then that'll be a win, I think. We'll give it one more go and then I think that'll probably be enough. That'll do it, I think. So now I'll just give this a clean up, get any of the stone material out of there. So that's all nice and smooth. Yeah, it's probably as good as she'll get, I think. So I'll give this a quick clean and then we can move on. Okay, now we've sort of got the cylinder sorted. That's ready to go pretty much. We'll get this piston back on. So I'm not really sure how you're meant to, oh, you probably would have this all together with that on there, but I'm gonna sort of dodgy it together, getting the piston back on, and I'll get the rings back into that cylinder somehow. We'll work it out. So here's our nice shiny new piston. We've got a pack of rings here. Here's our rings. Now I'm pretty sure they're both the exact same, so yeah, they are. There's no markings on them for any specific way they're meant to go up. I've still got the old piston, so I can look at that for reference anyway. On the piston, it's going to be hard to see, there's little pins being put in where the rings go. And what they'll do is they hold the ring in the position they want it, so there's no blow by, I'm assuming. So you can't really bugger that up. On the rings, where the split is, they've got an angle so that they'll lock into the pins and they won't work their way around. So I'll lube all these up and get them on. Handy little hint for doing rings is, I was always taught, put them in your palm of your hand and get a bit of warmth into them. Just hold them there for a minute or so. And what that'll do is it'll just get the metal a little more malleable. Won't make too much of a difference, but it's better than stone cold. Won't be quite so brittle, so it's a handy little tip. Got one ring on. So as I was saying, the pin's just there and the ring can't spin around it. Obviously it's even tighter when it's in there and it can't turn at all. Now, I would use a spring piston ring installing tool, but I haven't got one, so I'm doing it by hand. So it's alright, she's just a farm bike, so don't get too upset. Warm up this other ring and we'll put that on the piston. Alrighty, got the two rings on, their respective areas, so that's ready to go. So what I'll do is I'm going to use some engine assembly lube all this piston up. Well, I'll do that after I connect it up to the conrod. I've got the cotter pin here as well, put that on, get all that installed. There's an arrow for which way it goes to the front, so that'll sit like that. So I'll get the cotter pin, put that in and put the circlips in, lube it all up. And then what my idea is for getting it into the cylinder, because I don't have a ring compression tool here with me, what I'm going to do is try and use the zip ties, see whether or not that'll work, or I'll just squeeze them in with my fingers somehow. Hopefully I can get it to work. It should be alright. As I said, she's just a farm bike, so she's not too, we don't have to be too gentle with it. But I'll get this all set up on the conrod now. So here's the new roller bearing that sits inside the top end of the conrod. So I'll get a little bit of engine lube, put on that. This stuff's grouse. If you haven't used it before, it's really good for when you're putting your engine together. I used it on the 1HZ in the Toyota. Yeah, it's really good for first startups. It keeps everything lubed up, a little bit better than oil. It's a bit more clingy. It's almost like grease, but not quite. So this is what I use on my rebuilds. So this is what I'm going to use on this one. Don't need a great deal, just enough to get in the bearing. Slip that in there. Alright. We'll get our piston. What I'll do first is I'll put a circlip in one end, save me having to try and do two in there. A little bit finicky. Found just then the best way to do it, because there isn't two ends you can grab with a pair of circlip pliers. Shove it in like that and flip it around with a screwdriver. So now this end's in, we can stick that on and we can put the conrod in. I mean the cotter pin. Grab my cotter pin, grab a bit more assembly lube. As you can see, it's almost like grease, so it's really good. Might get it started off the bench. There we go. And it pushes in, just like that. All right. Now we'll try and get this second circlip in, and then we'll be right to go. We'll just whack that in now, and then we'll be right. Alright, so I got that piston connected. Just gave it a big lube up with a heap of oil and engine lube. So now what I'm doing is I've got a zip tie around the rings to compress them. That's how we're going to get them into the cylinder. So doing a little bit of dodgy brothers here, but we'll make it work. So that's what I've got going on. There's enough lip on the piston sticking out above the zip tie to allow me to get the cylinder over it. So once the cylinder goes over, that'll push that zip tie down, and then I'll be able to cut it off. So that won't be a big drama. So hopefully that'll slip on quite nicely. Put a heap of engine lube in there. So now we will try and slip that cylinder back over, and hopefully all goes good. And put the gasket on there as well. Alright, so here's the moment of truth. Go. So that's on over the rings. Alright, so what I'm going to have to do is cut the zip tie off now, because that's gone in just in the little groove there where the cotter pin is. Quickly get a pair of side cutters and cut that off. There we go. There we go. Easy as that. Gee, what a professional. So that's on there now. So now we can put the head gasket back on, put the head on, chuck the bolts in, seal her up. Happy days. Just wipe this excess engine lube off, just so we don't hydraulic the cylinder. So there's the nice new shiny piston in there. What I'll do, I'll try and get a comparison up, see if we can get as much movement as what we had in the original. Look at that. I think it was like had heap of movement in slopping that piston when we first did it. So I think that's already a big improvement. Okay, Nick, she's got a bit of side movement there. I'd say the rings are probably pretty tired. Yeah, quite a bit there. So I'll get the head on, we'll do that up. I can't remember what the tensions are. I'll just nip them up for now. I'll do them up nice and firm, and then I'll get the tension and tension them, and then we'll go from there. Just gave the fins on top of the head clean out. They were full of a bit of rock and mud, so I just gave them a quick clean. So we can chuck this head on there now. Here's the gasket. Sits on like so. I think it's sat something like that. I can always change it after if it's not right. Alrighty, so got that tightened up. Just tightened up with the ratchet. I will get the tensions for that and do that before I put the engine back into the bike. So what I might do is I'll get Dad to give me a hand to lift this engine back in, and then that'll be right to start bolting all that back together, start putting it all back together. But it's good just to get the engine back assembled pretty much. So yeah, I'll come back at you once I get that into the frame of the bike. Morning everybody. So back again. So as you can see here, the engine is back in the frame of the bike. Haven't done anything else, literally just put it in. But last week, when I put it all in, I was sort of playing around a bit. I was turning the engine over, it felt tight, turning it over. I wasn't sure if I'd done the clutch correctly. It just didn't feel the same as what I did before, and like the clutch boss didn't spin freely. Anyway, I thought I'll just put it in and go home and have a think about it. When I had a think about it, I looked in the manual. I couldn't work anything out of the manual, and I thought I'd go back through the video of when I pulled it apart. And I had a close look of when I was pulling it apart and realised I left a washer out. So there's a washer behind that little spacing sleeve that the like clutch and flywheel run on. So I need to pull that clutch back off and put that washer in, because I've got a washer spare that I didn't use, and I sort of was like, well, where the hell does that go? So that's not a big drama, because it's just that gasket side, so hopefully the gasket should be still alright. All I've got to do is just undo the screws, pull that cover back off, and pull the clutch back off. That shouldn't be too hard. Yeah, but I'm just going to wait for the missus to come so she can give me a hand, because I need the second person to hold that clutch from spinning. So what I'm going to do in the meantime is I've got the carby over here on the bench, and I'm just going to give it a clean out, just clean the jets and whatever out. And I've just pulled the bowl off it. As you can see, quite a bit of dirt and gunk in there. So
definitely in need of a good clean. Here's the little bowl off the bottom, full of dirt. Same with the rest of it, so pull that apart. So I'll strip that down and give it a good blowout and nice clean up with a bit of degreaser and reassemble it all. And I won't play around with it too much until we get it running, then I'll play with the tuning. So I'll pull all that apart now and give it a nice little clean up. Surprising how much crap was actually in the little jets and whatnot. So they're all clear now, so should be getting a bit more fuel. Hopefully that'll help it run a little bit better. Alright, that's pretty much ready to go back onto the bike. So we'll put that on there in a minute. Okay, got the carby on there, it's all sealed up. Just put a rag in the other end where the air goes in, so I haven't got the airbox on yet. So I'm going to do now is pull this cover back off, along with the oil pump. And yeah, I'll redo that clutch. I'll pull the clutch back off again, chuck that washer in and redo it all up. So hopefully that shouldn't be too much of a task. And then I'll show you what I did wrong, and then yeah, we'll move on from it. Okay, just pulled the clutch assembly back off, and I'll show you what I was talking about with the missing washer. I've just put it in. So here's that in the bushing, there's the washer there. So I didn't have that one in, and that pushes up. So what was happening was the back of the clutch was all pushing into the casing, and that was like jamming into the casing. So by me spinning it did chew a little bit. One of the gears chewed a little bit off the housing, a bit of alloy. Not that it's going to matter, it was just because the gears could go in further than what they usually could. So now that should all be good. So now I'll reassemble the clutch back on, put the housing back on, and then we'll be all caught back up and we'll be able to actually move on and make some progress. Okay, got all the clutch assembled, casing back on, so we're caught up now. So now I'll just start just chucking a few little extra bits on, get some hoses connected to the carby, get that all set up, get the oil pump cable set up, and then yeah, we'll push along from there. Okay, just hooked up the oil supply line to the carby, put the cable back in for that oil, so that's what controls the oil pump or the flow. So I'm not going to put that cover on because I was reading in the Yamaha manual, when you start it up and you haven't had it running for ages, or if you've done work to it, I think it's this little screw here. You've got to pull that out, start the engine, and with the engine running, you need to pull the cable all the way up, not on the throttle, just the oil pump cable, and hold that open until oil comes out to bleed it. Then when you've done that, whack the screw back in. So I'll leave that cover off so I can do that. Put the Kickstarter on as well, so that's working. So I'm still waiting for a spark plug. Peter Stevens gave me the wrong one, so I had to go back in and get another one of that. So that'll hopefully be here next week. So what I'm going to do is I'll leave it there. I'll get that spark plug, and I'll come back at you, and hopefully that'll be the last episode. All I'm going to do is just put all the airbox oil, the 2-stroke oil container back on it, the fuel tank seat, just the covers. So that doesn't take too long. We'll start it up, lead that oil pump, just tune the carby up a little bit, make sure it's as good as I can get it, and then we'll go over the bike a little bit, just make sure she's going to be right to ride, because she hasn't been ridden in 6 years. So yeah, we'll leave it there for today, and I'll be hopefully back at you next week. So thanks for watching, everybody. See you in the next one.